There we are.
Hey, we're live. All right. So, hi everybody. I'm Alan, uh, and this is Table Talk. With me is AJ. AJ, go ahead and introduce yourself to people.
As Alan said, my name is AJ. I am a longtime player of D&D. Been playing over 10 years. Holy crap, getting old. Probably around 12 years. So I started playing D&D 3.5 with my brother and some of his friends during high school, and I skipped 4th edition. I'm not going to lie. I skipped 4th edition, and it was a good choice. But now I play 5th edition. Have been basically since it came out. I play Minette on Roll with Advantage. It's my most recent character and probably my most beloved.
Yeah. So I'm Alan. I'm also the DM on Roll with Advantage. I've been playing D&D for a very long time, about 10 years. A good portion of that is DMing, and just recently I've been getting more into the playing space. So that's kind of where this idea for Table Talk came from. Is AJ and I were talking about how there just doesn't seem to be resources for new players or players in general as far as actual play. There's all sorts of information about how to optimize characters and things like that. But something that a lot of people don't talk about is like what to expect from a real D&D game, a D&D game where people like Matt Mercer or Chris Perkins aren't DMing. So that's kind of what today's show is going to be about, is just an intro to D&D for new players, people who haven't necessarily played tabletop RPGs or D&D proper. So yeah. So I think a good place to start off for the conversation would be what we think D&D is, right? From a 30,000 foot view, like, what is D&D to you, right? So I don't know, AJ, you want to take a crack at it?
Yeah, I thought about this a little bit earlier in the week and decided I didn't want to try and make the ultimate definition of what D&D is, because it's so varied and it means different things to different people. So to me, it's a system for allowing you to basically do anything within a role-playing game. It gives you the tools to let your imagination decide how the game is going to actually play out. Yeah. It's not quite...
No, I absolutely agree with that. I think to add on to that, I would say D&D can be really good at facilitating cooperative storytelling. I think it's a great place for that, and for I don't know, grown-ups, maybe sometimes grown-ups, to learn how to imagine again, and and I really like that about D&D or tabletop RPGs in general. I can reuse those imagination muscles that I kind of forgot how to use, right? Um, it's kind of been important to me, being able to play games like D&D with friends is been a way for us to bond over the years and stay in touch.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we were in college, that's how we stayed in touch. A lot of us, AJ included, dispersed over the state, and some, outside of the state, and we always kind of made it a point on summer break to kind of come back and make sure that we do play some D&D and catch up and imagine again. Yeah, that's kind of what D&D is to me, a facilitator for socialization, I guess. Is the short way for me to say it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So what I don't know. What do you like then about it? Outside of your thoughts and definition of it, what's your favorite part about it?
Personally, I enjoy the combat aspect. I like being able to see, like, as a programmer for my day job, like, I understand that game RPGs are all sort of based off of what was originally D&D, and that the probabilities, that's all has a root in Dungeons and Dragons. So to me, it's cool to see an analog version of that and be like seeing how the statistics change versus I don't know. I like the combat to me is really what drew me to it. I've had mixed experience with DMs as far as the role-playing side. Some have been better at facilitating it and bringing me into that aspect, despite basically just wanting to do the combat and have it be, a level up fest.
Like a dungeon crawl.
Yeah, a dungeon crawl. To me, that's what's most fun, because that feels more like the active part in a video game RPG. Is, there is story that happens, but with those kinds of things, you're not really having to think too much about the role-playing side. You're choosing from a set of options that they've given you, and they give you the illusion of having, as much choice as you want for the video game side. But with D&D, there's so much more you can do. It's literally only limited by your imagination and what the DM is prepared to react to. And that's where, the difference in, how the DMs have handled it have made role-playing versus the combat stuff, more fun with certain DMs.
I think to point out the whole, like, your imagination is your limiter thing. I think that was a giant draw to me, right? Like so back in the day, like when I first started getting into it, I had just gotten off of Oblivion, so I dumped tons of time into that game, and something that I missed was that I could do anything, right? Like I really enjoyed that about Oblivion to some degree, but I mean there was still a facet that was missing, and so like playing D&D allowed me to gain that facet where I could go one step beyond, and I think actually that governor of your imagination can be a giant intimidation factor, right? So like when I remember when I first started playing, though I was craving that release of from like the rules, right, of a video game, I still think that when I first hit the table and played this goblin character that the party had like saved or captured, I think the thing that I was really afraid of was not being able to come up with creative situations, and to some degree like letting the table down, and like making the wrong decisions. And I think over all the years of playing, I think one of the biggest things that I learned was that there isn't necessarily a wrong decision. Definitely depends on who's DMing the game, whether or not you actually have a wrong decision. But if you have a good DM, your decision isn't wrong, it's just a different way of going about something. Yes, whatever decision you make will have repercussions, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you've done anything wrong. And once I learned that, and once I learned like that everybody at the table is looking to have fun too, and isn't necessarily there or isn't there at all to ridicule you, I think that's when I really opened up and started developing a really deep sense of enjoyment from the game. And once I could get into those characters and get into that enjoyment, like that power band, I think that's when I really took hold of the idea of being a player. And I don't know, it was a very freeing thing. So I think that's something that's big to call out to new players is, yeah, you will feel like you don't know what to do. And even as a experienced player, I hit points where I'm like, I don't know what the fuck to do. There's cussing on the show, by the way, so hide your kid ears, I guess, if you're into that. But yeah, I mean, I really, I think as a new player, once you get past that barrier and you start opening up, and you start realizing that a lot of the people at the table are just there to have fun, and I think it becomes a lot of fun, and spending a lot of time with friends like that is great.
Yeah, that's one of the big things that I've noticed recently is who you play with has a big effect on your enjoyment of it. I've tried playing with coworkers in several campaigns. They're great guys. I like hanging out with them. We just don't click quite as well as the home group that we've got for Roll with Advantage. And part of that is just that we've been doing Roll with Advantage, I guess, long enough and had some existing connection to each other aside from Kinian. But we've bonded with him now that I consider him a friend, and I would not know. I have only ever seen him at your house hanging out for D&D. So those are the kinds of things that you can develop with other people, those stronger connections with them over a shared experience. But even with Marina, she tried joining one of the campaigns I had with coworkers that was specifically like, we can open it to, whoever. And she was going in there, meeting like 5 new people that day when we first started, and she did not have fun. She did not enjoy it. We played maybe one other time before we called it quits with that group, and I was not really expecting her to give D&D another shot, even though it's the kind of thing that she would enjoy, and I knew that. But her first experience was with people that she was not comfortable with, and her experience reflected it. So
I think that's a great call out too. Like, I think that's something that D&D kind of requires, is almost like a Sherpa. I don't know that it actually would require it. Obviously, people didn't know each other at some point, right? So, but I think it's definitely helpful to have that hook into a group, right? That investment with potential friends.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a Sherpa per se. It's nice to have an existing connection to somebody in the group. And that's not to say that everybody needs to be connected to everybody else, but as long as there's, a thread for everybody to be in, it will make the experience go at least a little bit better.
Yeah.
As far as having someone that's knowledgeable, I guess I can only say so much on this because I did join a group where the knowledge was pre-existing, and since then, obviously, I had the knowledge. So I can't say for sure how, if you had a group of 5 friends that all decided that they wanted to try it and have 0 experience with it, you might have some growing pains as far as trying to figure out how the game functions.
Sure.
But I don't think it's strictly necessary to have somebody with pre-existing knowledge, as long as you're willing to move slowly and learn the rules together and help each other learn the rules.
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
I think a really good example of this would be the Venture Zone guys. So the Venture Zone podcast started off. They just like blazed through the rules. They didn't necessarily read every page, and I think they did a really great job at showing people a really big important part of D&D, and that's the rules are optional, and the rules are there to give you a framework. And so, yeah, I think if you are in that kind of situation where you're all new to D&D, I think getting your best technical reader to quick thumb through the basics, maybe watching a couple of Twitch streams or YouTube videos or something like that, just to kind of get a grasp for the rules. But after that, just go with it, and when you hit something that you don't know, make a point to look it up, or make a point to look it up after the session. I take that back. I don't think Sherpa was the right word.
Yeah.
But definitely somebody to pull a link. And honestly, like having, I think a lot of it too is a potential for a friendship, right? Finding people that you're interested in connecting with, because Adventure League has a really great following, and people that's just a bunch of randos that get together at game shops. I know that's what Kenyon, I pushed Kenyon towards when he first started playing, a year ago. I pushed him towards the game shop and playing there, and he didn't know anyone. I told him, Ben plays there, and he's a really good guy, and I think you guys had hit it off. Go play with Ben, and they did, and his experience was really good from there. And I don't know if someone would necessarily have a good experience if they don't potentially link up with people. And I think the best way to find that out is to actually play D&D with somebody. You learn a lot about people and potential friendships through it. But
I guess it should be noted that I think both of our perspectives are skewed a little bit in that we're introverts.
Oh, sure.
Extroverts might not have quite as difficult a time with joining a random group of people they don't know. But from what I would guess, the majority of people, there might be a majority of people that are getting into D&D that are introverts rather than extroverts. But there's certainly both. There's definitely the draw to the role-playing side if you're an extrovert, theater crowd. We've got a mutual friend that was into that scene, and he doesn't like D&D per se, but role-playing games was an opportunity for him to act, and it just happened to be in a game setting. So just a slight bit, we are introverts. This is our perspective from it. I think that might be most helpful to the geekier crowd that would be getting into Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. And I think with that too, like something should be said about like potential gatekeepers. And this isn't a message to gatekeepers. This is a message to new players. There is a potential for gatekeeping out there, and that's kind of a real thing. People who might not necessarily mean to shut other people down at the table, whether it's through messages that they're sending with how their characters are playing or the language that they're using, but it is out there, and that if it happens to you, just understand that that's one of those connections we're talking about that just isn't going to work. Like that's one of those bad connections, and I really think you shouldn't give up on D&D because of those experiences. You should strive to find connections that fit your mindset, that fit your person better.
Right.
Find more
right.
friends.
Don't give up on the game. Give up on the group and find somebody else if something toxic is happening. So.
Right. Because I've been seeing a lot of that on Twitter and through blog posts and stuff like that recently, and I just
really
it makes me sad. Yeah, it's becoming a big thing. A lot of people are really vocal about it. It makes me sad because I see a lot of newer players getting discouraged, and even veteran players getting discouraged about the game and the gaming community, and which bums me out because I really believe that the core of the gaming community is an extremely accepting community, and that's what makes, I think, D&D so possible, is people are open to people being weird at the table, right? You can have at the same table, you can have somebody who's super full-blown into character, doing character voice, and you can have another person at the table who's talking third person, is disconnected as far as like,
they aren't the character, they are playing the character.
Right, exactly, and that's okay. And I think it's really cool that our community can accept that kind of those kind of differences at a table when we're playing a game that means a lot to a lot of people. But yeah. So new players getting into D&D specifically. Let's talk that front. So like a big thing that I wasn't necessarily ready for when I first started was, what do I bring? Like, what do I gotta know, right? And not getting into like the core mechanics, right? Like not getting into.
I think the first session you were kind of forced into playing with us.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, so I remember like the first session was like, hey, come on out. We'll make a character with you. We'll kind of show you the ropes, and then scheduling conflicts happened or whatever happened. We couldn't make the character, right? And so I came out and I got tossed an NPC, and it was off to the running. And so I didn't really know what to do. I think so. Like learning from that experience. Excuse me. I think one of the big things that that players should come to the table with is obviously your character sheet, a copy of the PHP if you can get one, and a pen and paper, right? Making sure you've got a scratch pad and stuff like that. Like that's the straight basics.
And dice.
And yeah, and dice. Yeah. So like, that's the straight basics, but something that that I think you also need to bring to the table is not necessarily a clear understanding of who your character is, but a basic understanding, right? So like after you've created your character, understand their bonds, their flaws, their defining traits, and then be prepared to act on those kind of things, right? Maybe those bonds don't necessarily align with your person, with your personality or your morals or what have you, but be prepared to act on that information, which is on your character sheet, and not necessarily what is in your personal mind. So being prepared to get into that character's mind. Do you have any advice on that? I don't know. I think my big thing, at least, for getting into the character's mind and like making sure that I understand the basics is, for me, it's coming up with a character voice. That tells me a lot about the character, and it's a lot of times that's what I like to build my character off of is when I'm practicing voices in the car or with my son or whatever. Sometimes I grab one that I like, and then all of a sudden I start packing a little bit of character here and a little bit of character here and a flaw here, and I've got this conglomerate, and then I just set it off wild at the table, right? But I know there's different perspectives on that, and I don't know what's your thing.
Entirely different than that.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Can't say I've ever once decided on a character voice. So, I do just want to point out, you were saying a lot about knowing the character and having that personality in your mind, and I think that's important if the style of game that you're going to be playing is role playing intensive, or really any amount of role playing. If you're strictly doing a dungeon crawl and it's not necessary, if you're only doing the combat side of the game, then having your personality figured out isn't necessary. It can lead to some interesting combat situations if you really want to play it up, but it's not needed.
It's not required. Yeah. And I think that's a great thing to point out is me and AJ are very different players. So yeah, I'm extremely RP. In fact, right now at work, I am running a character who is useless in battle, and all he is good for is roleplay situations, and I love it. I absolutely love it. It gives the other players at the table a time to shine during combat, and I get a time to shine during roleplay. But AJ, like he said, is very very combat oriented, and I think these are very different viewpoints, at least. So yeah. So what is it then that you build for your character? Like what do you bring to the table, knowing?
I like to explore fun game mechanics, so I look at the class abilities and figure out what types of character classes there are, and figure out which one I haven't done in a while, honestly, at this point. Something that's going to be new to keep me interested. I don't want to always be playing the same character, although shout out to Artificer. Fucking hella fun class. I think part of that is that you've been such a cooperative DM as far as my actual tinkering. I think I'm building a lot more than what the standard Artificer would be doing. Yep. But that's the character. So yep. It's cool that you've been giving me the freedom to say, I'm going to make this thing. And you're like, okay, here's how it's going to happen. But that's, to me, that is a really cool game mechanic. I'm outfitting our party. I am giving people buffs by, spending my character's downtime crafting them magical items. So that was the draw specifically to Artificer, is, you're not solely dependent on the random loot, that you can go out and say, this is the thing that I want to do, and have a slightly cheaper, significantly cheaper with how generous you've been, but slightly cheaper way of getting a magical item, something that you specifically want, that will help your character. That was the cool game mechanic for the Artificer that I wanted, / the Thunder Cannon, because nobody has guns in D&D, and having a gun has led to some funny role-playing of, nobody's expecting me to have this super loud cannon that I just carry around with me. So that's been fun. I try and switch it up from campaign to campaign. 5th edition has been very, very good as far as getting me to play magic users. In 3.5, hell no. Spellcasting in 3.5 was just, it was not done right. And 5th edition is very, very easy for a new player, even an experienced player who has these ideas about how Magic users in the past have worked out, and I've tried them and I've enjoyed them, because this edition is very friendly to new players and getting people to understand each individual class. There's loads of information about how everything functions. It's very easy to get into. For the most part, it's all very balanced. There's obviously still ways to break the game because, that's the nature of games. Kinian is ridiculous, and some of that has to deal with luck, / he's just kind of banking on the fact that he's going to smack the crap out of whatever he's close to, that it's not going to have the opportunity to hit back. So, but yeah, I think it's, to me, it's the game mechanic. Again, it comes down to the combat side, usually, of what style of fighting do I want to be doing. I've tried some of the more simpler ones, and it's just not as fun for me in this edition because there's more interesting things than running around and hitting things.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that's something that you pointed out is with like when you were talking about the artificer class and how I handle the artificer class versus how another DM would be handling that artificer class. Is I think if you're just starting out with D&D, I really think that's one of the things you should know going into it is if you can get to know your DM, just real quick. Hey, what's your style? What are you into? Things like that, because you don't want to cater to that DM's playing style, but let's say you have these grand illusions that as an artificer, that's all you want to do is build things, right? You want a DM that's going to facilitate that, or that's really going to hinder what kind of fun you have in your experience with D&D.
Right. You don't necessarily want to cater to what the DM does, but you want to know ahead of time if the ideas you have for the character is something that's going to actually get allowed to do, because if you're not playing strictly by the rules, you need to have the DM's approval on that, or you're going to get shut down real quick and you're not going to have as much fun.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the whole cooperative storytelling aspect, right? Is the cooperation. You and the DM have a little bit of give and pull, and depending on who you're playing with as players or as who you're playing with as a DM, you need to understand kind of how lenient is that DM going to be, or how is this DM going to potentially allow for some of my shenanigans or things like that. And that's kind of an advanced topic there. But I think the overall basics is once you've got kind of a handle on your character class options and stuff like that, and you've chosen a character you want to play, keeping in mind that the DM can amplify or turn down that volume on your fun based on their play style as well. And so, and if that happens as a new player, understand that there should be a really good line of communication. So if that happens to you and you just feel like you got shot down and stuff like that, I know it sounds silly, but just talk to them after the session, explain to them what you were expecting, and
after the session being the key word.
Yes.
Don't interrupt the whole game for everybody.
Yeah.
Talk after the session.
Yep. After the session is the exact place to have that conversation. Is hey, I expected, or this is kind of my expectation, or where I'm at with what I want my character to be able to do. Can we work something out? How can I play within your confines to make sure that I'm getting what I need? And honestly, if you can't find that balance, it's up to you to find a new DM or a new crew.
Right.
And I really want to stress that there should be leniency on both sides.
Right.
Because it is cooperative.
Right. Your expectations cannot necessarily always be met. Certainly if you're really trying to get some cool shenanigans, breaking all sorts of rules, you got to understand that you're not going to get your way 100% of the time. You'll get a lot, I think, out of a friendly GM. You'll get a lot of leeway, but you got to understand that they're responsible for making sure the other people also have fun, and they can't give you all the fun by giving you all these game-breaking things unless they give other people also game-breaking things. But that's not really the way you want to go with D&D. D&D really is about the struggle and the advancement of your characters, and not just
it's the journey.
It's the journey, journey before destination.
And I think on top of that too is
somebody out there will get that reference.
Yeah. I think on top of that too, the DM know as a new player, the DM is on your side. AJ touched on it and saying, the DM's responsible for everyone's fun. And so a really good DM is going to be somebody who understands that and is on your side, somebody who really enjoys your character and wants you to have fun, and isn't there to crush your spirits, Gary Gygax style, right? Unless that's the setting of the scenario, like Tomb of Horrors, most of the time, what the DM is doing is he or she is just facilitating, is adjudicating what people are doing at the table, and is the graphics engine and the processing unit, making sure that everything runs smoothly and we're staying roughly in the confines and people are having fun. So right. I think historically there is a feeling of you versus the DM, right? Like that's kind of some old school mentality that can kind of bleed through the generations.
Right.
But understand that really a good GM is going to be somebody who is on your side and is cooperative and is looking to make sure that your fun is balanced.
Right. Yeah, that's not to hate on our one friend who has done this, but he went into DMing with the mindset of he was trying to win, and it turned out to be a pretty bad experience for everybody,
including the GM.
Mostly the GM, actually, because the players won, and he did not like that. He is a competitive person. I understand where his mind was coming from. It was his first time DMing. He wanted to do it, and we wanted to play. That's the way things go sometimes. But that mentality, I think that ended things prematurely for that campaign because he was not enjoying the fact that he was always losing.
Right.
But he had an incorrect, and I don't often say that things in D&D are done incorrectly. Certainly there's rules that sometimes, if you've agreed upon, sticking to the rule book and you play this one thing wrong, that's done incorrectly. But this is really, I think, one of my big no-nos, and I understand it now because I've experienced it, is the DM is not the enemy, and the DM is not playing to win. If you do that as a DM, you are playing incorrectly, and you will potentially lose friends over it if you persist. So that's, I think, one of the big things, but that's not really why we're here. That's a DM discussion, and I think a lot of other people have already played on it. But
yeah, that's beaten pretty dead. But
if you experience that as a player, though, you can talk to the DM and try and get them to play more fairly, and just kind of let them know that it's not fun. It has to be fun for you as well. It's not fun for the DM. It's not supposed to be fun for other players. It's supposed to be fun for everybody, DM included.
Yep. And I think it should really be a different discussion, but I think that's where session zeros fit in. Is in that session zero, you all at the table, including the DM, discuss what kind of campaign or one shot or whatever you're doing that you're going to have, and then making sure that people's expectations are there. But
yeah, the idea of a session zero is something that is relatively new to me, at least.
Yeah.
I know
Same.
that when I started playing, I was joining a campaign in progress. Very, very far along, actually. I think they started. Well, I started at like level 12 or 13. So like, I had a kind of a strange start, but there just wasn't time to give me a session zero because other people had already invested a year of time into this particular campaign. They had a rapport. I was allowed in because I was a younger brother of a player, and bless them for that, for letting me join. But yeah, session zero. I think a session zero for a new group, a new set of people that you're playing with, can be very useful.
And it can help new players too, because people can discuss, what that feeling is that you're going to come into, and kind of what people's personal expectations for gameplay are going to be. And I think as a new player, that's a really, really good way of getting an impression for the people you're playing with. Because honestly, like, even really close friends, they're going to be different.
They could be different, yeah. They could be different from what you're expecting, especially if they're established players and you're new. They have the potential to have an entirely different personality when they're gaming. As certainly if they really get into the role-playing side, they are playing a new character. They are, potentially will be acting quite different from what you're normally used to. So A session 0 can establish those kinds of things. I think also a session 0 for new players is good for establishing some basic rules. If you really never played before, a session 0 can be used to explain some of the more basic rules as far as how things go. You can ask questions before gameplay even starts, and you'll be that much more comfortable of having gotten some answers before showing up. That reminds me, even for new players and for old players, don't be afraid to ask questions during gameplay. If you don't know something, that's fine. Even I don't know everything at this point in D&D. There's just so much that can happen because it's so open-ended. Not knowing exactly how everything functions is not a problem. Certainly when the DM's playing monsters that have special abilities, you're not going to know everything that they're capable of and know how to respond. The DM will tell you. For most cases like that, of you're getting hit by a zombie, maybe you make the Constitution save for rotten flesh or whatever it is. But
I think what you're touching on too is feel free to ask those questions because somebody at the table knows. The chances are, especially if you're just playing the standard 4 players 1 PM, somebody at the table knows. And
yes and no.
Even when but your chances are much greater, right? If someone doesn't know, while the other people are completing their round in combat or are acting out this RP session, somebody who's just not participating because of whatever reason,
not actively participating in the action. They can
look it up. It's basically multi-processing, right? You've got all these cores at the table. Somebody can spin off and do their own thing.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that definitely helps from a new player perspective. Is being open.
That is a really big fear, I think, for a lot of new players is they don't want to go in and look like they don't know what's happening. But everybody knows you're a new player. It's okay to have questions.
Yep.
You're going to ask questions frequently. That's the only way you're going to learn how it goes.
And veteran players should be accepting of that.
Right.
Like they know that you're a new player. They also know, or they've been where you're at, right? They've been in that point where they knew nothing, and so they should be accepting and very helpful with that, even with the most basic of rules, like initiative or anything like that.
To a point, yes.
Yeah.
There's a reasonable expectation that you will learn and will not need to be asking the same questions 6-7 sessions down the road.
Right.
Ask a couple times, that's fine. If there's really something that doesn't stick in your head, make a note somewhere on your card, get a reference. Someone will be able to help you figure out a small notation for how this thing functions. But if it's a question about your character's abilities, that's something that you do need to learn. You don't need to know it session 0, but as you are progressing, people will start to lose some patience if you're constantly needing to ask it, unless there's some extraneous circumstance. But I think there's a reasonable expectation of learning through the process and
getting a feel for it.
And just learning the character. Always, like, even as a veteran player, if I were to play like a warlock, I don't know how their magic specifically works, so I'd probably ask questions too. It's not the same as a sorcerer, which is the one that I'm most familiar with. So, yeah.
I think so. Like, a really great tip for a new player that I like to do is, even as a veteran player, everything I do for my character, where there's rules spelled out in the book, I make a page reference notation right next to it, right? So, like, any class features or how a spell works or anything like that, I make sure to put PHB 166, whatever that notation is, where that rule is kept. That way, when I'm at the table, I have the tools to look it up. And anything outside of that, I feel comfortable enough to say, what is the grapple condition again? I can't remember, right?
Right.
Or quick look it up in the book or whatever. But yeah, I think that's one of the things in D&D that is it's really cool about it, and it's also can be hindering from a onboarding perspective, is the amount of rules. And I think it's up to our community to help teach new players how to play proficiently.
Yep.
And so, it's just on you as a new player to learn, and it's okay to learn and make some mistakes and stuff like that, as long as you keep learning and you're advancing your knowledge and making sure that the game starts going smoother. But yeah, I honestly, I really don't think that rules should ever stop you from playing D&D. If you've got a decent enough DM, they can cut down those rules enough to simplify it for a full group of brand new players, so that you're not getting into multi-classing rules and you're not getting into all the super advanced stuff. You're just sticking to the easy stuff and you just slowly tack a little bit on. So, but yeah. So, do you have any last remarks?
That was Marina, by the way. She opened my door. If you heard that. Not in particular. I think we've discussed a lot of good things for introduction purposes, so I don't believe there's anything like pressing that I would need to say for an introduction.
Okay.
Introductory session, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in that case, it was really cool to do this on Twitch. This is our first time ever streaming on Twitch, and it's really exciting for me, and I think probably for AJ. I'm not going to speak.
Yeah, we had a little technical difficulties to start with, so It's nice that this appears to be working nicely. Although I think it's funny, I've got the Twitch desktop app, and it says that my personal account is streaming because it recognizes that I'm the one streaming to your account.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, if you're really interested in this conversation and you want to take this conversation a little bit further, you want to hit us up and maybe give us your thoughts. Tell us about your first time playing and what you were afraid of. Let us know what you thought, what you think you as a veteran player wish you could have given to you as a new player. Hit us up on Twitter, right there in the bottom right. hit us up on Twitter, use hashtag Table Talk, and let us know. You can also, this will be on YouTube, which I guess now is on YouTube because we're in the future. And
technology.
Basically, yes. Subscribe if you like. We're doing this for fun. We like talking about D&D and being nerdy and stuff. So we can keep this conversation going also in the comments. So hit those up. And I like to stay on top of things and talk with the community. And I know others at the table for Roll with Advantage really enjoy doing so too. So yeah. I think with that, we're gonna sign off.
I will add to this bit of, if you're a veteran player, let us know your fears. But if you're a new player, if you have not played D&D before, and somehow you found this video, let us know where your thoughts are at too. I think that would be a very interesting perspective to see. If there are new people out there that have found this because they're trying to get into it, that's the target audience for this one, at least. If you guys have questions that you want to ask random people on the internet, we'd be happy to answer them too.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, check out the website, DM's Table. We got a lot of cool stuff coming in the next few weeks and in the next couple months. And hit us up on Twitter if you want some pretty immediate reactions from us, like a crisp high five or a fuzz bump. And we'll see you out on the internet, folks.
Bye.